So I wish you the best of all possible journeys and the courage to speak softly. Thank you very much.
It's been very interesting to see how the pandemic has affected introverts, because for so many introverted people, there was a kind of a break that we could take from expected forced socializing, and that was happening both within the office, but also in terms of weekend socializing. Suddenly it was okay to be able to suddenly it was okay to be able to stay home and read a book or watch a movie instead of going out to a party or going to see friends or like that. The interesting thing, though, is that happened not only for introverts, but also for extroverts too. I think many extroverts realized that the previous society before the pandemic had been so much focused on external self-presentation and on socializing, that it was a kind of break for everybody. And now everybody is deciding what are the aspects of the pandemic life that we might like to take with us, even if we do get to a place of post-pandemic life. When introverts go back to school and work, it would be a good idea to think about what were the aspects of life that were a real welcome change for them, and how can they bring some of that with them into post-pandemic life. So, for example, many people talked about just the pleasure and the emotional freedom of being able to take a walk during the day. And that's something that we can do even when we're in a very busy office full of people. We can still say, excuse me, or you don't even have to say, excuse me. You can still step out and go for a walk for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And that can be enough to give us some of the solitude that we're craving, and also to be able to recharge and get some of our energy back. There are also, if we realize that we actually needed to have a certain number of hours per day that were quiet time, we can make sure to build that into our schedule. So during the pandemic, that happened naturally, but now we can say, okay, well, I know that I have a sales meeting at 10, and I know that I have a presentation at 11, but maybe there's nothing that I have to do at 12. So at 12, I'm going to put into my calendar that is going to be the time I take a break. I'm going to maybe go and get lunch by myself, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. And I'm going to put that into my calendar, and I'm going to honor my commitment to that item in my calendar just as much as I would if that were a client meeting or a meeting with my boss, because I know that the more that I am getting the break that I need, the more present, the more effective I can be the rest of the day. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's great that people are using the MBTI as an icebreaker when they meet each other, because that's such a great way of getting into real, open, honest conversations about who you are and who the other person is. So I think that's wonderful. In terms of how do we accept ourselves, I'll tell you, before Quiet was published, I have a friend who teaches leadership at Harvard Business School, and she told me that she would always start her leadership classes at the beginning of the year by having her students take a personality test. And she said she thought nobody was really filling out the answers to the test honestly, because they would all identify themselves as extroverts, so it would always seem as if she had a class of 100% extroverts. And then somehow during the years after Quiet came out, And the perception started to shift, and people started to understand that introverts have real strengths and a lot to be admired about introversion. And people started to fill out the questions honestly, so that now when she gives the test, half the students say they're introverts and half the students say they're extroverts. And the only thing that has changed is that people now understand how to use their own strengths, or introverts understand that they can use their own strengths in a very admirable way. And I think we need to do this with all of our personality traits, that it really doesn't matter what the trait is. The question is how you use it. You know, we're all given in this life different powers. And maybe one person is, you know, in Star Wars given a lightsaber, and then another person in Harry Potter is given the power of being a wizard. And the question is to use the power that you have been given. And so to draw on your own natural strengths. And so the introverts who are really contributing in this world, and there's so many of them, we see them everywhere, especially all over business and technology, but and the arts as well. These are people who are drawing on their natural strengths. And that's what MBTI can help us do. I always feel sad when people feel that the book or that my message is somehow against extroverts, because really my book is pro introvert and pro extrovert. I actually believe that introverts and extroverts need each other very deeply. I don't think you can have a successful company team without having a mix of introverts and extroverts. And we know that from the research. And this is also true in our personal lives. You know, you often see introverts and extroverts becoming very close friends because the introverts love the extroverts' energy, and the extroverts love about the introverts that they will bring them to a more quiet and deep place. And we really need each other. So my beloved husband is an extrovert, and I will tell you that's not a coincidence. I mean, we really need each other. You know, he brings so much energy to our family. And I think I bring a lot of groundedness to our family, and our children really benefit from having both ways of being. So yeah, I love extroverts and I love introverts. I think the key is to, what I'm really talking about is the need to understand ourselves and each other, especially in our friendships and our relationships and our marriages. You can avoid so many misunderstandings and so many conflicts by understanding that your partner or your friend or your teammate at work is behaving in ways that seem wrong or inexplicable to you, but they're acting that way because they have a different temperament from your own. And once you understand that, it makes it so much easier for the two of you to get along and to work out your differences. So that's really, I'm writing from that place. That's a very good question. So my next book, it comes out in June, and it's called Bittersweet: How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole. And it's about the bittersweet view of life, which is the recognition that joy and sorrow always go together, and that everyone and everything we love in this life is impermanent, but that what comes with that recognition is a kind of joy at the beauty of the world, and a sense of meaning and creativity and connection and transcendence. So the book is all about that. And it's interesting because when I first started writing it, I thought of it as being a very different book from Quiet. But I can tell you that in the United States, so the book, I was so excited. I did not expect it, but the book hit #1 on the bestseller list the first week that it came out. And I started to get all these letters from readers, and the letters from the readers were so similar to the letters that I had gotten for Quiet. That, with Quiet, I got so many people telling me that they finally had permission to be their true selves. And with Bittersweet now, it's something very similar. People feel seen and understood, um, and also a sense of permission to look at the more melancholic side of life, to admit that this life includes sorrow and longing and melancholy right alongside all the joy and beauty and laughter, that all of that is part of life. Even though we live so often in a society that tells us not to talk about those things, but we know from our poetry, we know from our music, we know from our religions that these sorrows and these longings are a very deep part of the human soul. And if we want to tell the truth about ourselves and about each other and about what it means to be human, we have to speak about this also. Well, I will tell you, I started writing Bittersweet about maybe 7 years ago. I had no idea that the pandemic was coming, of course, but during the pandemic, I lost my father and my brother to COVID. So it was a very interesting experience because I was writing all about sorrow and longing and melancholy and thinking about grief. And then suddenly I was faced with two very profound griefs, one right after the other. And well, there's so many things to say about grief and about how to move through it. But one of the things that really helped me was the knowledge, the very deep heart knowledge that this is the state of humanity. We have always been beings who would lose those who we love the most. That's just the nature. That's the nature of reality. And we're all together in that experience. And there's a kind of communion in that. At the same time, it doesn't take away the pain, and it doesn't take away the fact that every day my son will do something and I want to call my father, or I'll hear a piece of music. My father loved music the way that I do, and I'll hear the music and I'll think, oh, I want to call dad and share this music with him. No, I can't call him. And every day there's that recognition again and again and again. But we are all in this together because that's the state of being human, and there is something very sustaining in that. So I would love so much to visit South Korea. I was, as you say, I was there with my family in 2013. I absolutely loved it. And here in the United States, we actually live in a community where, in a town where there are many, many, many families here from Korea, many Korean restaurants, we have many Korean friends. So I love Korean culture, food, everything. So I would love to come. We haven't decided yet, only because we're waiting to see how things go with COVID. But I am very, very hopeful that we will be able to make it there. 감사합니다. I really appreciate all of you.